You're not bad with money. You're living in an economy that has turned survival into a monthly payment. Every month, before even thinking about the future, you have to pay to stay afloat. Rent, groceries, gas, insurance, health insurance, car payment, credit card, interest, medication, internet, old debts, new emergencies, and after all that, someone still comes along saying that the problem is you, that you should save more, work more, cut out coffee, cancel a subscription. Make a better budget. Be more responsible. But what if that explanation is wrong? What if millions of people aren't failing at the same time? What if the problem isn't just a lack of individual discipline, but an economy that's squeezing ordinary people from all sides at once? Because this is the truth that many people feel in their bodies, but haven't yet been able to put into words. You're not broke. The economy is breaking you. If you want to understand the economy without being blamed for suffering within it, subscribe to the channel. Here, we explain what's really happening, in simple language. Think about the life of an average person in the United States today. She works. Maybe she works a lot. She cuts expenses. She avoids luxuries. She cooks at home. She drives less. She compares prices. She switches brands at the supermarket. She postpones purchases. She pays bills on the tight budget. She tries to be an adult, rational, responsible. But even so, at the end of the month, it seems like the money simply disappears. And the cruelest part is that it doesn't disappear with one big, absurd purchase. It disappears at the basic level. It disappears when filling up the tank becomes a financial decision. It disappears when a trip to the supermarket feels like a threat. It disappears when rent rises faster than your salary. It disappears when car insurance increases without a clear explanation. It disappears when a doctor's appointment turns into a fear of debt. It disappears when the credit card ceases to be a convenience and becomes a survival tool. And this is where many people misunderstand the story. This isn't just about the bill getting bigger. All the exits are getting smaller. When only one thing goes up, you try to compensate. If gas prices go up, you drive less. If market prices go up, you buy cheaper. If rent goes up, you cut back on leisure activities. If your credit card bill is too high, you tighten your belt on spending. But what happens when everything goes up together? Gasoline is more expensive. Food is more expensive. Rent is more expensive. Insurance is more expensive. Healthcare is more expensive. Debt is more expensive. Interest rates are higher. Jobs are on the rise. Layoffs are increasing. Artificial intelligence is threatening entire careers. At this point, we're no longer just talking about personal budgeting. We're talking about an economic siege. Because you can't just stop eating. You can't just stop living somewhere. You can't just stop going to work. You can't simply stop needing health care. You can't simply stop using transportation, energy, insurance, telephone, internet, medicine, or credit. These things are not luxuries. They are the minimum infrastructure of modern life. And when all these costs go up at the same time, life starts to feel like a treadmill in reverse. You walk, you strive, you try to move forward, but the ground is moving against you. And the more you try to keep up, the more tired you get. This is the emotional side of the crisis that the graphs don't show. On television, they talk about inflation, interest rates, the job market, productivity, economic growth, and consumer confidence. But at the kitchen table, economics becomes much simpler questions. Can I pay the rent this month? Can I fill the tank? Can I buy enough food? Can I go to the doctor? Can I lose my job without losing everything? Can I pay the card bill? Can I help my children? Can I take care of my parents? Can I breathe? And when basic questions start to have no clear answers, the person experiences not only financial hardship, she feels ashamed. She starts to think, maybe I'm the problem. And that's where financial gaslighting comes in. Financial gaslighting is when ordinary people are convinced that all their economic suffering is their own fault, even when the cost of living is rising faster than any household budget can keep up with. They tell you to cut back on small luxuries, but they ignore the fact that rent has skyrocketed. They tell you to cook at home, but they ignore the fact that supermarket prices have become outrageously high. They tell you to drive less, but they ignore the fact that many people need a car to get to work. They tell you to compare insurance policies, but they ignore the fact that they're all getting expensive. They tell you not to go into debt, but they ignore the fact that many people are using credit cards to buy food, gasoline, and medicine. They turn an accessibility crisis into a lecture on discipline. Yes, discipline matters, budget matters, choices matter, but discipline doesn't fix a system where the basics are becoming too expensive for people working full-time. There's a difference between overspending and being squeezed too hard. Overspending occurs when you have the budget, but you make poor choices. Being squeezed too hard is when you cut, and even then the essentials remain more expensive than you can afford. And for millions of Americans, the problem is no longer luxury. Now the problem is basic. The crisis doesn't begin when everything collapses all at once. It starts when you trade meat for something cheaper, then avoid leaving the house, then she postponed the doctor's appointment, then you only pay the minimum amount on your card, then use credit to buy groceries, then he's late on a bill, then you pretend everything is fine because everyone else seems to be coping better than you, but it isn't. Many people are breaking down in silence. Many people are smiling at work and calculating debt at night. Many people have jobs and still feel poor. Many people have degrees, experience, and responsibilities, yet they feel that life has become impossible to achieve. And that is the central question. If so many people are doing everything right and still falling behind, perhaps the problem isn't just about individual choices. Perhaps the problem lies in the economic environment in which these choices are being made. Because a better budget can help you survive within the system. But he cannot fix a system in which the cost of survival rises faster than people's lives can keep up. And the next part is even more important. Because when money is tight for long enough, the problem ceases to be merely financial. He begins to change the human mind. Scarcity doesn't just affect your bank account. She messes with your head. When money is tight for long enough, you start thinking differently. You walk through the market silently calculating your finances. You look at every car trip as a financial decision. You avoid opening your banking app. You feel anxious even before swiping your card. And this doesn't happen because you are weak. This happens because the human brain wasn't designed to live in a constant state of financial alert. When you're under constant pressure, you don't make decisions in a neutral environment. You make decisions in survival mode. And survival mode changes everything. When money is tight, mental space is also tight. You can be intelligent, hardworking, and responsible, but if every week you have to choose which bill to delay, which purchase to cut, and which problem to ignore, your mind gets stuck in the short term, not because you don't care about the future, but because the present is shouting too loudly. That's a scarcity mindset. You're not just short of money to spare. You have no peace of mind left. And here's the cruel part. After the economy puts a person in that state, society looks at them and asks, "Why didn't you make better decisions?" But how can we make better decisions when every decision is fraught with fear? How can you think about retirement when the monthly rent already feels like a threat? How can you look for opportunities when you're mentally exhausted trying not to fall? This is where a lot of financial advice starts to fall apart. They speak as if everyone were sitting calmly, with time, energy, and options. But many people are making their own life decisions during their lunch break, in their car, after a sleepless night, with an overdue bill, an almost empty gas tank, and a credit card nearing its limit. That's not a lack of character. It's overload. And there's another trap, continuing to try to live by old rules in a new economy. You think, this is temporary. Prices will go back down soon. I'll recover soon. But what if it's not just a phase? What if the cost of existence has changed more profoundly? You try to make an old budget work in a new reality. You try to maintain the same standard not out of irresponsibility, but because your mind still wants to believe that normal life will return. And that shock hurts, because it's not just that things have become expensive. The promise became too expensive. The promise was simple. Work hard, pay your bills, be responsible, build a life. But now many people work hard and still lack stability. They pay bills and remain in debt. They do everything right and still don't advance. After trying several times without success, discouragement sets in. People stop looking at their bills. They stop planning. They stop dreaming about a house. They stop imagining retirement. They stop believing that effort changes anything. And when this happens to millions of people, the problem ceases to be just personal. It becomes economical. A healthy economy needs people who believe in the future. People who buy, invest, study, start businesses, raise families, and build plans. But when too many people go into defensive mode, everything changes. People are buying less, taking fewer risks, trusting less, planning less. And an economy full of people in defensive mode begins to lose strength from within. Now look at the chain behind all of this. When energy becomes expensive, transportation becomes expensive. When transportation gets expensive, food gets expensive. When food becomes expensive, families cut back on purchases. When families cut back on purchases, businesses sell less. When companies sell less, they cut costs. When costs are cut, jobs are threatened. When jobs are threatened, workers spend even less, and the cycle tightens. Diesel fuel is a central component in this. Diesel fuel powers trucks, farms, construction, freight, deliveries, and food distribution. When diesel prices rise, it doesn't just hurt drivers. It places an invisible tax on almost everything that moves within the economy. Food needs to be planted, harvested, processed, packaged, refrigerated, transported, and placed on the shelf. Each step has a cost, and when these costs rise together, they don't disappear. They come to you. That's why the market calculations seem increasingly absurd. It's not just that a product is getting expensive, it's the entire structure behind ordinary life becoming heavier. And this explains one of the biggest confusions today. How can the stock market seem to be doing well while so many people are drowning? The answer is simple. Wall Street and Main Street don't feel the economy in the same way. The financial market measures profits, expectations, cost cuts, margins, and assets. It doesn't directly measure if you're sleeping poorly. It doesn't measure if you're skipping doctor's appointments. It doesn't measure if you're embarrassed at the checkout. It doesn't measure if the rent swallowed up your raise. Sometimes, a company appears stronger precisely after making ordinary people weaker. When companies lay off workers, investors may see it as cost-cutting. When prices increase, they may see it as a way to protect their profit margins. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we can imagine future productivity. But for the worker, this can mean fear. For the family, it could mean less income. For the consumer, this could mean a higher price. The economy may seem healthy on a spreadsheet, but unbearable at the kitchen table. If this is exactly what you've been feeling but couldn't put into words, leave a like so more people can find this explanation. And comment below what's weighing most heavily on your life right now. Gas, groceries, rent, insurance, health, debt, or fear of losing your job. Because the more people put this pain into words, the harder it becomes to pretend that it's just an individual problem. But there's still one huge piece missing. When jobs start to seem replaceable, and when home ownership ceases to seem like a plan and becomes a mirage, the crisis is no longer just about prices. It turns into a crisis of the future. When even qualified people start to feel replaceable, the crisis changes shape. It's no longer just about prices. It turns into a crisis of the future. Because before, many people believed that if they studied, worked hard, gained experience, and were useful, they would have some security. Perhaps she wouldn't become rich, but it would have ground to cover. Today, even this ground seems unstable. People with degrees have been searching for jobs for months. Experienced workers are being laid off. Professionals who thought they were in secure fields are now looking at artificial intelligence and wondering, am I next? And the fear isn't just that artificial intelligence will be able to do its job. The fear is that her boss will believe she can do it. That's the point. Technology doesn't need to perfectly replace a worker to change company behavior. It only needs to create a strong enough narrative to justify cuts, please investors, and put pressure on wages. And when workers feel they are disposable, they negotiate less. They accept more. They complain less. They endure more. They stay in bad jobs because losing their health insurance seems too dangerous. Fear becomes an economic tool. And now add housing to that. For decades, home ownership was sold as the symbol of American adult life. Work, save, buy a house, build stability. But for many young people and families today, home no longer seems like a plan. It looks like a mirage, high price. High interest rates, expensive insurance, rising property tax, HOA fees, maintenance, impossible down payment, rent-consuming half income. People aren't delaying adulthood because they're immature. They are postponing because the entry fee has skyrocketed. Getting married has become expensive. Having children has become expensive. Buying a house has become expensive. Moving to a different city has become expensive. Getting sick has become expensive. Even working has become expensive if you have to pay for gas, car, insurance, clothes, food, and childcare, just to be able to show up for work. And that's why the economy doesn't just appear in graphs. It appears on the body. It appears in the couple arguing about money. It appears when the father or mother eats less so that the children eat better. It appears in young people who stop imagining the future. It appears in workers who hate their jobs, but stay because they can't afford to lose their health insurance. It appears in the person who smiles at the checkout while feeling embarrassed to remove items from their cart. It appears in people who say, "I'm fine," but are paying for food with a credit card. It appears in those who look at their own salary and think, "I'm not living. I'm just avoiding falling." That's why you feel broken. But you're not broken. You are financially overburdened. And now, the most important thing is not to panic. Panic paralyzes. Clarity prepares. This doesn't mean the world is ending tomorrow. It doesn't mean everyone is going to lose their job. It doesn't mean every company is going to go bankrupt. It doesn't mean there's no way out. It means you need to stop pretending this is normal. Pay attention to the signs. Gasoline and diesel prices rising. The market growing faster than wages, layoffs shifting from tech to other sectors, credit card bills increasing, people falling behind on car payments, small businesses closing, insurance becoming absurdly expensive, rent forcing more people to share housing, families using buy now, pay later for basic necessities, people cutting back on medical appointments, people saying they're fine while silently sinking deeper into despair. The crisis becomes real when ordinary people start financing their own survival. If that's the reality, then the question ceases to be, how do I get rich quick? The question becomes, how can I become less fragile? Don't make big commitments based on best-case scenarios. Look at your job security, build liquidity whenever possible, reduce obligations that leave you trapped. Understand which bills can wait and which bills could destroy your stability. Track essential costs, not just total expenses. Learn skills that increase your adaptability. Stop measuring your life against people faking prosperity online. And most importantly, stop accepting financial advice based on shame. Cutting back on coffee won't fix an impossible rent. Canceling streaming services won't solve an unaffordable health insurance plan. Creating a spreadsheet won't lower the price of gasoline. Budgeting helps. Discipline helps. Planning helps. But you need to understand the difference between improving your habits and blaming your habits for a structural crisis. The goal now is not perfection. It's resilience. It's about looking at the economy with enough clarity not to be manipulated by shame. Because millions of people are feeling the same thing, but suffering alone as if it were a personal failing. It is not. You're not tired because you failed. You're tired because the economy is taking more from you every month. More money, more energy, more attention, more fear, more time, more future. And then they still try to convince you that it's your fault for not being able to handle it. But you're not crazy. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are living in an economy that increases the cost of survival and then blames you for struggling to survive. If your life seems more expensive, more unstable, and more exhausting than it did a few years ago, comment on what has changed the most for you. Leave a like if this helped you understand what's really going on. And if you want to continue connecting the dots, watch the video that's appearing on the screen now.